You're listening to another ambitious entrepreneurnetwork.com podcast. The voice for entrepreneurs and small business. Now, onto the show.
Welcome to the Christian Entrepreneurs Podcast. Daily conversations with Christian entrepreneurs to inspire and empower Christian business owners to walk strongly in their faith, while build a thriving business that honors Him in every way. Now, over to your host, Anne-Marie Cross.
And welcome to another episode of the Christian Entrepreneurs Podcast. This is episode 80, and I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross, the podcasting queen. My guest today says faith is her steadfast foundation for her life and her business. And joining me on today's show is Jodie Guerrero. Jodie is a multifaceted survivor, and she has taken her lemons to the next level, turning them into lemonade. Jodie is a triple cancer survivor, has a mobility disability, and she is a mum to two special needs girls. Jodie's health struggles started when she was only 35, and she's been fighting blood cancer for 11 years now, which is currently in remission. Now, in 2007, Jodie started a blog to keep her family and her friends up to date on her changing issues. And this blog has since evolved into a website that's become more and more popular over the years, with former and current cancer patients, medical staff, faith believers, and people looking for health answers. Now, on today's show, Jodie is going to share how to remain calm and positive, even if you're in the midst of life's storms. She's going to talk about her prerogative is to make something great of her challenges. And she believes that this is what we are called to do with our difficulties and our problems. And she's also going to talk about how her goal in life has always been to turn the worst around into the best, and rather than play bad victim, be a successful survivor. So welcome to the show, Jodie.
Very good. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. It's lovely to be with you today.
It's such a pleasure and an honor to share this platform with you, to be able to share your story, share your journey, because just reading through your bio today and what you've been through, I mean, so many of us go through just this little portion of what you've experienced. And sometimes for some of us, it can really throw us up against the wall to the point where we're not really able to see those challenges and particularly health struggles as a way to make lemonade out of those lemons. So it's such a pleasure and an honor. So share with us, when you were at that stage, we thought, I'm going to start this blog. Did you ever foresee that it would become something that it is today?
No, not at all. It really came out of a need to inform a lot of people all at once.
Yes.
So I had lots of family and lots of friends inquiring as to what was going on with me. And of course, it can become very tiring to have to say the same thing over and over again. So we really needed to update everyone in one blog or in one email if we could. And I didn't want to spam a whole heap of people, but I wanted them to know that they could go to a particular place and read about what was going on with me. And I really did feel that there was purpose behind what I was going through. I knew that God had a plan for my life. And at the time I was working in aerospace. I was working with some amazing people, some doctors and NASA people and all sorts of intelligent professionals. And I knew that God had amazing things for me ahead, but I wanted to use this experience to help as many people as I could. And so I started to also add to the blog little things that I'd learned along the journey.
Amazing. And we'll certainly share with people at the end of the show the blog where they can read, because I've gone through, and as I'm reading, I'm thinking, my goodness, the things that you've gone through to really be able to not only get through that, but to get through that with, there is a reason for this, there is a purpose, and I'm going to turn this around, can really only come from knowing that we are loved and that no matter what happens, he is there to protect us and to comfort us. So let's talk about how, if someone's listening today or viewing the recording and they're in a situation where perhaps they've been given news of themselves or their family members, some news that really has them have to take a step back, okay, we need to make some changes. How can they remain calm and positive even in the midst of life's storm?
I think what I found is having a firm foundation underneath you. It means that when these storms come along, you can cling to something that's not going to move underneath you. And for us, that was our faith. And we had a very strong faith before we started on this health journey with my own health. And we also had a church foundation. So for us, that was important because we know that the church in itself at the time wasn't going to move. It wasn't going anywhere. The people involved in it weren't going to dissolve their fellowship. They were going to be there with us, and they'd assured us that they would stand with us during the worst times that we could possibly imagine. So having those people there around us was really important. So I would say to anyone listening that's going through a difficult trial or circumstance, find the foundation you need underneath your feet that will stop you from moving around. Find the people around you that will be your crew, that will gather around you and support you through the difficult times. And there is actually some things online you can use to help you through that. There's a website called Gather My Crew, which is like a scheduling website that you can use where people come online and they schedule different jobs that you need done. That's just one little piece of advice, but really it's about foundation. It's about having something firm underneath your feet so that there's a group of people around you who will never leave.
Yes. I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper into two areas. Number one, just speaking into often when we are in a situation where we need help. For some of us, it can be difficult to ask for help. I wanted to speak into that, but also recognizing that there are people around you who want to help, and sometimes it's because they don't know how to help. So let's talk about asking first, because sometimes people around us, they're there ready and waiting, but they just need you to ask. Then we can dive a little bit further into what are some of the things that made a huge difference for you, so that those of us who are in a situation where there's someone in our life, our family, our church, who does need help, how can we offer the help that someone may need, even if they are struggling to ask? Love to hear you share some.
Okay. I've had a bit of experience with this. So it really is about offering practical help. That's where we found the most best things that people could do for us. So and that was about going to the person saying, listen, I've got Saturday free. I'd like to come and mow your lawn for you. I'd like to come and wash your dishes for you. It's about offering things that you do at your own home for that person. So think about if you yourself were, you yourself were out of commission, you were lying in bed for 6 weeks with the flu or whatever. Think about the things that you couldn't do yourself and offer those to the person who's going through the cancer or through the difficult medical situation or health situation. Think about, what would I need if I was going through this situation myself, and offer those things practically to that person. Often some people will come up to, say, myself or someone else and who's going through a difficult situation and said, look, I'll help you. You just tell me what you need. And often it's really hard for the person going through that health situation to actually say, oh, I need this, this, and this. They feel uncomfortable with it. So it's always good if you can go ahead and just say, look, I think you need to maybe have your lawn mowed. I'll come and do it for you. Maybe offer some of those things practically in that sort of way.
Yeah, I love the idea that you mentioned about the app, or even having a list. Just like when we have people that are attending weddings, we don't often know what the bride and groom want as a gift, but having a list that's updated can provide people with, oh, I never even thought I can do that, or let's gather up a few people to be able to to carry that out for
That's right.
for the individuals and the family as well. Because I know, you know, sometimes unless you've experienced something, you don't know, will I be intruding on them? Should I leave them alone? You know, all those kind of things. And it just makes that whole conversation far easier. When you are thinking about even just, I mean, obviously as Christians, we're going to be prayer supporting and so pastoral care. Looking back, were there a couple of things that people did for you that made a huge difference? I mean, obviously practical support, but looking back, were there things that people did, the unexpected things that you think really lifted you up and kept you in good stead, even during those difficult times?
Yeah, so obviously for us as Christians, having that constant prayer network around you is very helpful, because you feel emotionally and mentally the physical pain that you're going through and the physical discomfort of the treatment makes you feel awful emotionally, mentally, and sometimes spiritually. You just you feel depressed, sometimes anxious, and you feel completely like you are lonely. No one understands what you're going through. And so for me, the prayer foundation was really important. And a lot of people who don't follow God or don't follow Jesus or don't have a religion may not understand that can really help with the way you feel through your treatment, through your disease, and through your health. And so for me, that was really important. I think also for me as a mother, as a wife, knowing that my husband and my children were taken care of. So my husband works full time, as most do. And for me, it was important to know that there were other people coming into the home and helping him with some of the needs that he had to look after the kids. That made me feel relaxed, because I wasn't worried or stressed out about him having to struggle at home or take over with my jobs that I normally do. So we had a group of ladies. They weren't even from our church. They just, they knew of us, and they came in and they actually paid a cleaner to look after our home while I was having my transplant, which was a bone marrow transplant 3 years ago. And they came in and they, out of their own pocket, they paid for a cleaner to clean everything. We didn't ask them to do it. They just did it. And it was amazing. It was done for about up to 6 months.
Amazing.
Which was just incredible. And it made me feel great, because I knew that, okay, my husband doesn't have to struggle to work full time and also, you know, clean the floors and everything else that he had to do. So that allowed me to relax a little bit when I was recuperating.
Yes. So I think sometimes as women, even if we are ill, we're not talking about, you know, a longer term illness that we are struggling with you know, medication and so forth. We often will lie there looking at the dust that is more and more on the windowsill and not getting done. And often it's that emotional stress that can inhibit our healing too. So if we know that's being done for us, can make a huge difference. And in actual fact, I think unless you're in the shoes of someone, which is so good that you're sharing this today, we don't realize that even if it seems the smallest of things, like picking up grocery, picking up the children from school, whatever it is, can make such a significant impact on you emotionally and physically, and obviously too.
Yes, absolutely. You know, for us as women, and even for some men who are stay-at-home dads, there's a lot of little tiny things that we do at home that we don't even think about day to day. You know, we might spend an hour, like you said, going around dusting and doing all sorts of stuff. And when you're thinking about all these little things and you're in the hospital or you're dealing with treatment or whatever, it really impacts on the way you feel like you're recuperating or the way that you're healing, because you're worried about those things all the time. You're worried about whether they're being taken care of. And, you know, these are little things that impact on you daily.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things that you said is your prerogative is to make something great of your challenges. Has this been an attitude and approach that you've had, even if you trace that back to your childhood, or was this something that you had to actually make a decision and an intention to say, you know what, I need to go from this approach, because if I don't, it's going to just hold my by obviously your treatment and just your progression back to healing. If you didn't. How did that show for you?
So when I was 13, I was saved, or I became a Christian through my grandmother. And she led me to the Lord in her kitchen in Sydney. And my parents weren't Christians, but I had decided that I wanted to follow God the way my grandmother was following God. And from that point on, I felt like I had a real mission to perform. And I was only young and I didn't really know much about Christianity or callings or anything like that. But I really felt that there was something there for me, that God had something there for me, and he wanted me to do it. So as I went through high school, I decided I wanted to be a missionary. And I didn't really understand that to be a missionary, you needed a proper calling to a certain country or somewhere like that. And so I think that God had decided he wanted to put me through a trial maybe, and allow me to get some experience and some difficulty, and then help other people as a missionary, almost like a health missionary.
Yes.
This is kind of what I've come to the determination that this is why I've gone through what I have gone through, and God's using my trials and my difficulties as a person who can minister to other people, can help other people, and to be a light and to be an encouragement where there is very little. And there tends to be it's very difficult for people to get encouragement in their circumstances. I know a lot of people will say to people going through difficulties and health circumstances, just be positive, be positive, be positive. That's all they hear. And that is a nice sentiment to say, but often they don't know how to do that because everything around them is negative.
Yes.
So I think it's been an important thing for me to really, take the positivity that I have inside me and maximize it and magnify it and use it as best I can to get me through the everyday, which is what I do.
Oh, absolutely. And I so agree with what you say, and just, want to honor you in that, the situations and the challenges that and the mountains that we have to climb, and the issues, as I said, often within that, there builds in us a strength. And when it is partnered with him who created us, and loves us more than anything, he sent his son, to die for us, then we realize that we don't have to lean on our own strengths, I think. But it is the strengths that you have built that now becomes the message and the story and the support that you share to others. And that has become so evident through the people that I've interviewed. And so I have no doubt whatsoever that, your message is certainly one that is going to make an incredible difference for those who are struggling, even Christians. Sometimes we can often ask that question, Why?
Yes.
Why? And when you look at what you've experienced, I mean, we only touched on the surface of it. When you actually go and look at your books, like, wow.
Yes.
And so did you ever go through that? And if you did, what did you do? Were there Bible verses that you reminded yourself of? Because the enemy loves to poke us, doesn't he?
Look, he does. Absolutely.
What pulled you
Sorry,
through?
go ahead. I keep cutting you off.
No. This is, I was going to say, so what really pulled you through? What got you through?
So when I was first diagnosed, it was an emergency situation. I had been trying to find a GP or someone who would listen to me and not think I was a hypochondriac in regards to my symptoms. So I'd been through 11 months of a delayed diagnosis. I'd been to 7 doctors, over 21 different visits. The reason I know that is because we went through a medical negligence case after I had been diagnosed. And it was quite an awful time trying to get someone to understand that I felt sick, and I was getting sicker and sicker, and I had pain, and no one would do anything about it. No one would investigate it. And it eventually came to the point where I was in so much pain and in so much difficulty health-wise that I went to my local hospital. I went to actually the Royal Brisbane, and I was immediately hospitalized after they did a CT, and they found cancer all through my torso. They found lymphoma. It was actually called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, follicular B cell, and it was a very awful stage 4, eating through nerves, muscles, bones, you name it. It was infiltrating my body, and I had the shock of my life when they told me that I was actually full of cancer. So it was, I was in hospital for about 10 weeks. And during that time, I remember looking out over the city. I was placed in a ward, a hematology ward, because it was a blood cancer. And I was looking out over the city, crying, calling out to God and saying, God, why in the world would you do this to me? Why would you allow this? Why would you, give this awful disease to me? And I was blaming God, and I was saying, Lord, I've got 2 little kids. I've got a kid that's 2 and 5 years old, and I've got a full-time job and a husband and a house. And what am I supposed to do? Well, God sort of very gently just assured me that he was in control, but it was a very gentle, guiding feeling that I knew that if I had faith and love for God, that he would never leave me. He would never abandon me. And it took time for God to convince me that he was here and he was with me, and he was holding my hand through it. And it wasn't really a particular verse or song, but I did often sing the song, I Will Survive.
And you did, and you are.
And I can't remember the lady who originally sung that. It was Aretha Franklin or something. I don't know. But anyway, I Will Survive. I used to sing it when I was in the MRI or the CT machines that went through my body, and when I was having radiation and chemo and everything. And I'm thinking, well, I will survive. I am going to survive. And the funny thing is, I was talking to a gentleman who is a Japanese chaplain. He works in the hospitals in Japan. He's a Christian, and he was telling me that he always observed that the people who said they didn't want to survive, or they had a very depressive attitude, or were worried about things all the time, they often didn't survive. But the people who told the chaplain that they wanted to survive and they wanted to go on and they were very positive, they were the ones that survived. Yeah. So it's interesting to hear that what comes out of your mouth and what is in your heart really makes a massive impact to the way that you heal.
Yes.
So I believe that there's real power in words, and there's real power to the way, if your heart is in a positive way, that there's real power to that.
Oh, absolutely. Because as you're saying that, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was the environments that you are in, particularly when you're going to some of the consulting rooms and then you're getting your treatment, you're surrounded, and often there are other people. And of course, it can be a terrifying situation because, the unknown and so forth. And if you're not careful, you can allow that, external, even unsaid and unspoken messages really impact you. And let's face it, we're created, our bodies are created to heal themselves, aren't they? When you have a cut, you've got, I don't know, because I'm not a medical professional, but things happen to heal. And I think when we allow the body to do what it, does best, and don't, impact it with the negative thoughts and worry and anxiety, which can make you physically ill, doesn't it? Can't it? If you can make yourself physically ill. I think when we realize that, it can make a significant difference. And I'd imagine because you were a Christian, for many people, what they do is we do what we're required to do or instructed to do. And there's a reason behind that. It's not just a fast rule. It's because it's healthy for us. We renew our minds each and every morning. We're focusing on what we know is going to speak truth and life into our life. And I'd imagine that made an incredible difference as you were going through all your therapies and your treatments.
Yeah, so like having a Bible with me, even just having the Bible pressed to my chest or having it in my hand, not even just reading it, but the power of the Bible itself and the power of the words in that Bible were important to me. And I would pray every day. I would read my Bible every day, but I would also hold on to it because it was something that I had in my hands that would reassure me that everything was going to be okay and someone was on my side. Yes. That I wasn't just a guinea pig in a scientific, lab or something. I was actually a person that had a spirit and a soul, and it was worth fighting for that. It was worth fighting for the life that God had given me in this body, and I needed to continue to press in and to continue to fight for my life, because there were a lot of bad prognoses around me. There were a lot of people around me who were dying in the wards. There were a lot of people who were screaming out in pain, and I had to absorb all of that while I was trying to stay positive. Yes. And many times in hospital, I had to see people who were half dead or who were being wheeled out into the morgue. And so all of these things, they make a huge difference to the way you feel, but you have to hold on to your faith and to your positivity. And I think, at the time people would say, like I said before, people would say, oh, stay positive, stay positive. And I often thought, oh, I'm so sick of hearing that because that's what everyone says. But in the end, it took me a long time to really understand why they were saying that, because it actually does make a big difference to the way you heal, staying positive. I think a lot of people often say stay positive because they themselves can't deal with what you're going through and they can't hear the negative because it impacts them. But I do believe after time, it took me a while, of course, to understand how that positivity makes a big impact on your daily healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where the difference would also lie, sometimes we say comments, don't we, which it almost seems fleeting. But when real truth in life and full of expectations that, you know what, there is healing, there are miracles, and, you are loved, then that stay positive is not just empty words, but a real promise, isn't it?
It is a real promise. It is. It's totally a promise.
All will be well. All will be well, because it will. No matter what happens to us, all will certainly be well. And as I said in the introduction, you have been fighting this blood cancer for 11 years now, which is currently in remission.
Yeah, so it's really good. I've had 94 doses of chemo and radiation over the last 10 years. And of course, that does take a big toll on your body. I mean, I've got a number of difficulties. I have new bone marrow now. I had a bone marrow transplant 3 years ago, and we went around the world to find a bone marrow match for me. My sister was not a match. So there is a thing on the access through the hospital. It's called the bone marrow registry, and anyone can become a donor through their blood bank. And so I was matched for it was actually a gentleman in the United States, a 30-year-old United States male. I wasn't able to know anything about him. It's a very anonymous process, but he agreed to give me his bone marrow through the bone marrow registry. And they were able to harvest his bone marrow. They sent it over with a scientist on a plane all the way from America to me. After 7 days of giving me very, very strong chemotherapy to wipe out my own diseased bone marrow, they then injected me with his bone marrow. And then it started to grow and develop blood from his cells into my body and through my bones. And so I now have his DNA, and my blood type changed from an O positive to an A positive, which is his blood type. Yeah. So
a whole new you.
A whole new me, and I'm actually part American, which is so funny because my husband's American, and I now have American bone marrow. So and my daughter's a dual citizen, so we're all Americans now.
When one of my church or fellow parishioners at our church, their daughter also had leukemia and had a marrow transplant as well. And they were saying that sometimes it can change the color of your hair, the color of your eyes as well.
Yeah, it can actually, I'm not sure about your eyes and your hair. I'm not sure. I have not heard that before, but I know.
Well, no, don't take it with a, just take that with a compliment, because maybe I dreamed it, but because it's your bone marrow is actually, it's just core of who you are, isn't it?
That's right. Well, it makes your blood. So a lot of people don't know what their bone marrow does. They think it just sits inside your bone and is nice and spongy, and it must do something for the immune system. But it actually is very important. It makes your blood. It has its own DNA. So I have two types of DNA. One that I was born with, and the bone marrow's the donor's bone marrow. So yeah, it's very, very important. And actually, at the time, people say that you can take on the characteristics of your bone marrow donor. The only thing I noticed was that I had a desire for all things strawberry. So I don't know what that was, but I actually wrote him a letter. And some donors decide that they don't want to get in contact with you, or they want to remain anonymous, and that's fine. Yes. I wrote him a letter. I didn't hear back from him, but I said to him, I don't know if you like strawberries, but for some reason I had the desire to drink strawberry milk, eat strawberries, anything strawberry. Whereas before the bone marrow transplant, I wasn't interested in strawberries. So I think that might have been from him. I don't know, but all I know is that this man saved my life, and I do take a lot of medication for anti-rejection purposes. But I am really grateful that this person was a match for me and saved my life again.
Oh, absolutely, and we can certainly hear that come through in just your whole approach. And Jodie, just before we finish, I'm going to ask you to share, how can people find out, how can they read and get access to your blog? What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I started the blog a long time ago, but everyone's welcome to go on. So it's jodiesjourney.com is the main website. And you can go on there. You can even engage me as a consumer health advocate for yourself, for your family, anywhere in the world. I do help a lot of patients go to their doctors, talk to their family and friends, and become an advocate for them so they get the right treatment, and they're able to communicate through someone who's a third party. A lot of people find it difficult to do that with their doctors. So that's what I do basically as a small business. And, you know, I'm always happy to communicate with people who are desperate, in need, and having problems getting through their circumstances. Over time, when you're in the health and the not the hospitality, but the hospital system, you tend to pick up a lot of things that are helpful little hints about how to get through the system, how to get through the medical system, you know, because some of the best tips I've ever found and the best advice have been from patients, other patients that I've been journeying with. And often I tell my doctors, look, this patient told me this something else, and they'll go, wow, I've never heard of that before. And so it's really important, I think, to have someone on your side and to have someone working with you. That's why I do what I do, and I feel that's part of my mission, and part of my my goal in life is to use what I've done and been through to help as many people as possible.
Yeah, fantastic. And of course, we'll put all of those links on the show notes, which people can access, ambitiousentrepreneurnetwork.com/TCE80, show 80. Look, thank you so much for coming on the show. God continue to bless you and, you know, maintain your healing, and for your mission now, supporting others who need that support. Just continue to experience God's blessing and favor on that work that you're doing. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. It's been a pleasure, and I'm always here to chat anytime. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Christian Entrepreneurs Podcast, brought to you by BeTheDifferenceMovement.com. Changing the world one message at a time. Do you feel called to influence real change with your message? Join our supportive community of like-minded influencers, thought leaders, and disruptors at www.BeTheDifferenceMovement.com. That's BeTheDifferenceMovement.com.